Jai Shri Narottam Das Thakur ki Jai. Shri Narottam Das Thakur Appearance Day ki Jai. So thank you, Navi Prabhu, for collating this content, which will help us to know more about Srila Narottam Das Thakur today. So I'll get started. So Narottam Das Thakur appeared almost around the same time, when just a few years before Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu disappeared. So that's the time period. And before Narottam Das Thakur appeared, even before that, there were some signs of a great personality who was going to born. So this is where we're going to start today. So once when Lord Gauranga decided to go from Puri to Vrindavan, he stopped in the village of Ramkeli to see Rupa and Sanatan. And at that time, he began to shout in ecstasy, "O Narottam, O Narottam." From this, the intimate devotees, especially Nityananda Prabhu, knew that a great personality would soon take birth as Narottam, which means the topmost person. However, on this occasion, his ecstasy was far deeper, and Nityanand asked him the reason. So Lord Gauranga said that across the Padma in Keturi, Padma is a river, and Keturi is the name of the village where Narottam Das Thakur was born. So Gauranga said that across the Padma in Keturi, Narottama will be born, and he will be the recipient of his intense love, which Gauranga was going to deposit in the river Padma, and that this great soul will appear soon in their lifetimes. The next morning, Gauranga went to bathe and deposit his love in the Padma, which overflowed. At that time, the personified Padma, understanding that she has to deliver the love to Narottam, appeared before Gauranga, asking how she will be able to identify the recipient of the love. And Gauranga answered that when somebody enters your water and causes you to overflow, as I have made you feel greatly jubilant, he is the person. And then Gauranga left this world in 1524, and Narottama was born around 1520, just 4 years prior to that. And fast forwarding to when Narottama became a teenager, Nityanand appeared to him in a dream, saying, "Tomorrow, as the sun begins to rise, you should take your bath in the Padma river. At that time, you will receive the totality of Gaura Prem, or love of God." So when he woke, Narottama immediately complied with Nityanand's instruction. Entering the Padma, he felt himself undergo a vital transformation. Just then, Gauranga appeared before his eyes and affectionately embraced him. As their bodies merged, he felt Gauranga's very essence engulf his soul. It is said that at that moment, Narottama's natural dark complexion turned to molten gold, the color of Gauranga. This place is called Prematali Ghat on the Padma River in current Bangladesh, and pilgrims visit this holy place. On the banks of the Padmavati River in the town of Keturi, in the month of Magh on the day of Purnima, 1520 AD, Sri Narottam Das Thakur took his birth. His father was King Krishna Nanda Datta, and mother's name was Sri Narayani Devi. The king's older brother was Purushottam Datta, who had a son called Santosha. And Santosha will in future is going to become a disciple of Srila Narottam Das Thakur. So he was his cousin. The wealth and fame of these two brothers was beyond compare. So here we mean Narottam Das Thakur's father and his uncle. Seeing many auspicious omens surrounding the birth of his son, Raja Krishna Nanda was very pleased and gave lavishly in charity to the Brahmanas. The Brahmanas, seeing all the auspicious signs surrounding the child's birth, prophesied that the boy was a highly perfected soul and great personality by whose influence many people would be delivered. And the king's son grew more effulgent and beautiful with each passing day. His bodily luster was just like molten gold. His eyes were large and shaped like lotus petals. His arms extended to his knees, and he had a deep navel. All these are the bodily symptoms of a Mahapurush, a great personality, and all the local towns people used to gather to take darshan of the beautiful saintly child. The king's wife, having given birth to such a wonderful son, was floating in the ocean of ecstasy. She always kept the boy close to her and was always concerned for his well being, caring for him constantly. The boy was extremely peaceful. Wherever his mother put him, he would quietly stay put. Within the ladies' quarters, the ladies used to nurture and care for the child with great ecstasy. Then came the time for the boy's Anprashan Sanskar, or the first grain eating ceremony. And at that time, in order to ensure auspiciousness and a bright future for his son, the king Krishnananda gave much in charity. A lot of astrologers and brahmanas were invited, and the astrologer present at that joyful occasion noted that all the auspicious signs on the child's body, and he predicted that the boy would be an illustrious person. This baby will be the greatest of men. Therefore, he should be called Narottama. The festivities went on happily until Krishnananda tried to feed his son the rice and the child refused. So they tried again and again, but the child would just not eat, and that made the king a little bit disturbed. And the whole atmosphere turned into anxiety, and everyone looked nervously at each other, not knowing what to do. And then the thoughtful astrologer, however, reassured everyone, don't worry, this baby will not accept food unless it has first been offered to Lord Vishnu. So then the rice was offered to Lord Vishnu and then again offered to the child. And to everyone's relief, the child happily devoured it. So from that day on, realizing the value of prasad, the king ordered only food which has been offered to Krishna should be given to my son. And although the worship of Krishna was customary in their family from the time of Narottama's birth, everyone became more attentive to the service of the Lord after this incident. So he started preaching right as a baby. He was an adorable boy and endeared himself to everyone. Soon he was the talk of the town. Just one glance at Narottama is sufficient to cool my mind and chase away all miseries. From every angle of vision, the prince is beautiful. I have never seen such a gorgeous boy. In this way, Krishnananda's son was glorified by different people throughout the town. So gradually, the day of his entrance into school approached, and everyone was astonished at his amazing intelligence. Simply by hearing a subject once from his gurus, he would commit it to memory. In only a short time, he mastered the study of Sanskrit grammar, poetry, rhetoric, and became expert in many different scriptures. After the glorious incident at the Padma River, he saw as useless any knowledge which did not promote Hari Bhajan, and soon lost interest in everything but Krishna consciousness. Even informing his parents after they noticed a change in him, what happened at the ghat, requesting them if he can search for the Lord. The parents became, being concerned, called a spirit tamer to save the possessed boy, suggesting silly treatments. Day after day, Narottam began to think of how he could become free from family life and constantly engage himself in the Lord's service. He was indifferent to all material enjoyment. Where most children usually like to play, he was uninterested in playing games. At this time, hearing the glories of Nityanand and Sri Gauranga from the lotus lips of the devotees of the Lord, his heart was filled with spiritual joy, and that is all he was interested in. So there was an aged Brahmana in Sri Keturi named Krishna Das Kaviraj, who is actually the author of Chaitanya Charitamrita. So they were contemporaries. And so Narottam Das Thakur had the good fortune of directly hearing about Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu from the author of Chaitanya Charitamrita, Srila Krishna Das Kaviraj. And since he was a genuine servant of Lord Krishna and loved Narottama deeply, he could not let a single day pass without seeing Narottama. And he used to actually go to their home every day to explain the glories of Lord Chaitanya, to tell the Leelas of Lord Chaitanya to Narottam Das Thakur. And he was so powerful that by dint of his devotion, no one dared to disobey him. So whenever he went to the home of Narottam Das Thakur, he was welcomed wholeheartedly with all enthusiasm, and Narottam Das Thakur used to humbly fall prostrate at his feet, and offering him a seat, he would then eagerly inquire about Lord Chaitanya and his associates. Krishnadas Kaviraj happily narrated the pastimes of the Lord in three parts, Adi, Madhya, and Antya. He went on to glorify the transcendental activities of Nityanand, Advaita, and all the other devotees with such emotion that even wood or stone would melt upon hearing his devotional narration. So naturally, Narottama was lost in the ecstasy for love for the god. With eyes full of tears, he joyfully worshipped his Lord privately, oblivious of everything else. In this way, he lost all taste for mundane pleasures and could not bear to even hear topics related to royal pleasures and properties. Aware of their son's growing apathy for material life, Krishnananda and Narayani were filled with anxiety and could think of nothing else. Finally, they decided to appoint someone to constantly watch over their son, but still they were unable to find peace of mind. Narottama's home became a prison for him, and he longed to be free. Although he said nothing, he was constantly waiting for the opportunity to leave home. Every day he secretly pleaded desperately for the Lord's help. His body became covered with dust as he rolled on the ground crying. Raising his arms in the air, he begged pitifully, Gauranga, Nitai, Advaita, my lords, please save me from this hell. One day, due to the desire of the Lord, Narottama fell asleep in his dream and he saw Gauranga. His splendid beauty could not be compared to gold, lightning, or anything else of this material world. The beautiful curling hair hanging down his back could turn the mind of even the most virtuous woman. His earrings shone brightly, and his lotus eyes were the trap of Cupid. His smiling face could easily defeat the effulgence of the moon, and the beautiful tilak on his forehead could capture one's breath. His graceful hands swept down to his knees, and how broad his chest was. Beautiful jeweled garlands hung around his conch like neck, and his deep navel was finely shaped. His thin, his thin waist defeated even the lion. His knees looked like toppled banana trees, and his feet were more attractive than lotuses. How gorgeous was his threefold loincloth! So, observing all this beauty of Mahaprabhu, Narottama shed tears of love and fell on the feet of the Lord. Placing his feet on Narottama's head, Gauranga said sweetly, O Narottam, look at me. I cannot bear your tears. Don't worry, go straight to Vrindavan. There you will be initiated by my dear devotee Lokanath. He will happily pour the nectar of the Mahamantra into your ears. I have many plans which are to be served by you. In his dream, Narottama also saw Lord Chaitanya on the bank of the Ganga in Navdvip. He was enjoying his pastimes along with Nityananda, Advaita, Gadadhar, Srivas, Swarup, and other associates as they engaged in Sankirtan, while the people of Navdvip witnessed their divine pastimes. Eager to inspect this beautiful scene, even Brahma, Shiva, and other demigods and goddesses mingled with the crowd in disguise. Even the animals and birds were charmed. Those who were born blind were suddenly able to see and rushed to observe the extraordinary Sankirtan performance. Seeing this wonderful fun, Narottama wept with joy. On seeing Narottama, Gauranga embraced Narottama and put him in the care of Nityanand and Advaita, who encouraged Narottama again to go to Vrindavan. Narottama then woke up. He wept with joy as he began to see many auspicious signs indicating good fortune. In anticipation, he waited, hoping that the fortunate moment would soon arise. After this, in order to understand how to become free from family life, Narottam Das Thakur began to think day and night of how he could go to Vrindavan. Narottama has prayed, Hari Hari, Kabe Haba Vrindavan Vasi. Oh Hari, when will I become a resident of Vrindavan? When will I serve the beautiful divine couple in Vrindavan with tears in my eyes? Seeing Narottama's indifference to all sense pleasure and his intense renunciation, King Krishnananda and Narayani Devi became even more vigilant to watch over him. Narottama Das saw that the difficulties involved in escaping were becoming more impassable than the Himalayas, and thought that he might never be able to go to Vrindavan and absorb himself in the worship of the holy feet of Sri Gauranga. Thinking only of how to get the mercy of Sri Gaur Nityananda, he began to pray very earnestly for guidance from them. Then some messengers came from the ruler of Bengal, informing King Krishnananda that the ruler of Bengal wanted to meet with him. In order to meet with the ruler of Bengal, Raja Krishnananda and his brother Purushottam Datta set out on a long journey to the court of the ruler of Bengal. Narottam took advantage of the moment, thinking it to be a good opportunity to leave home. And at that time, he secretly left his mother and his protectors. He turned towards Vrindavan and began his journey to that holy land. And soon he was on the road to Mathura. And it was on the full moon day in the month of Kartik that Narottam Das Thakur left his family behind. All the other pilgrims that he would meet were very affectionate towards Narottama, as they could recognize him as the son of a king. He would sometimes live by drinking milk and sometimes would eat the roots and fruits as he went along. His constant hankering to see Vrindavan made his hunger and thirst go away. However, after 3 days, his soft royal feet began to blister, and at one point, due to exhaustion, he lost consciousness. While he was in that exhausted state, Gauranga appeared to him in the form of a golden skinned Brahmin and supplied a pot of milk for him to drink. However, not recognizing the Brahmin, and because he was so exhausted, he again just fell to sleep. And as he slept, Rupa Goswami appeared to him in a dream and informed him that it was Lord Gauranga himself who had brought that milk for him personally, and that he should drink it and then proceed on to Vrindavan. This gave Narottama great assurance and enthusiasm. So before leaving that area, however, his father had sent to scout to search for him. They found him. However, with his sweet words, he convinced the guards to let him go on his way, and one of the guards even offered him money for his expenses. As he moved from place to place, he would hear the glories of Gaura and Nityananda from the mouths of many devotees. In this way, he was always thinking about their lotus feet, constantly absorbed in meditation. And as he walked and walked, he prayed to the lotus feet of Sri Nityanand Prabhu, as he has written, Ara Kabe Nitai Chand, when will Nityanand show his mercy to me and free me from the world of birth and death? By his mercy, one may give up material enjoyment and purify his mind. In this way, by the mercy of Sri Nityanand Prabhu, one can attain Vrindavan. In this way, walking and walking, Narottam Das finally arrived in Mathura, and seeing the Yamuna, he offered many prayers. Remembering the names of the six Goswamis headed by Sri Rupa and Sri Sanatan, he began to weep in ecstasy. Gradually, he came to Vrindavan itself and entered into that holy land. Upon reaching Vrindavan, he came upon the magnificent Radha Govindji temple built by Rupa Goswami. The Vaishnavas immediately informed Sri Jiva Goswami of a newly arrived effulgent personality who was showing all the ecstatic symptoms of love of Godhead. Jiva Goswami immediately understood that this was Narottama, and together with other great saints greeted young Narottama. Jiva Goswami requested him to serve the lotus feet of Lokanath Goswami. Lokanath Maharaj was very old and was so deeply agonized by the pain of separation from Sri Gauranga that it was as if his very life had been taken away. Narottama offered his obeisances to the lotus feet of Sri Lokanath, and Lokanath asked him, Who are you? Narottam said, I am your fallen servant. I wish to serve your lotus feet. Lokanath replied, how can I, who am unable to serve Gaura Nityananda, accept any service from anyone? So Lokanath Goswami asked Narottama to constantly chant for a year, which he did, but still Lokanath would not initiate Narottama. So Narottama would secretly go in the middle of the night to the place where Lokanath Maharaj would pass stool and urine and cleanse that area, maintaining everything there very nicely. After a year of serving in this way, Lokanath Goswami realized that Narottama was engaged in this humble service, and with Gauranga's encouragement in a dream, he bestowed his mercy upon Narottama Thakur. On the full moon day of the month of Shravan, he initiated Narottam Thakur as his disciple. Narottama excelled in spiritual practice. One day he dreamt that a divine Vaishnavi asked him to serve under the Gopi Champaklata and make special milk for the divine couple. When he woke, he immediately ran to his guru, who confirmed that the divine person was none other than Radharani herself, informing Narottama of his eternal sweet service. So Narottama would often go into trances and boil milk, which sometimes would boil over, and he would use his bare hand to stop the overflow. When he would come out of the trance, his hands would be scorched. His meditation was very effective. So, by the order of his guru, Narottama would study the Goswami scriptures under the guidance of Sri Jiva Goswami. Srinivas Acharya was his dear friend, and the two of them used to study together. And at that time, Shyamanand Prabhu also arrived from Gauradesh, which is Bengal. So Shyamanand also began studying the Goswami scriptures under the guidance of Sri Jiva Goswami. These three, with one mind, performed their bhajan in Vrindavan. And then, once they were all done with their scriptural studies, one day Jiva Goswami called the three of them and said, in the future, you must preach the message of Sriman Mahaprabhu far and wide. Taking the literatures of the Goswamis with you, you must quickly go to Bengal and begin preaching. So all of them gave up their residence in Vrindavan, and accepting the order of of Jiva Goswami on their heads, they all started on their journey to Bengal, and they took the scriptures with them. So this is a picture of Narottam Das Thakur, Srivas Acharya, and Shyamananda Prabhu. So on their way to Bengal, they gradually came to a place called Van Vishnupur. And in Van Vishnupur, there lived a king of dacoits and thieves named Sri Birhambir. And at night, he had stolen the scriptures, thinking them to be some kind of a treasure. So when they woke up the next morning and seeing the scriptures stolen, the three of them felt as if their heads had been hit by a thunderbolt. Miserable beyond description, the three of them began searching in the four directions for the scriptures until finally they got the news that King Birhambir had stolen the books and was keeping them hidden in his royal storehouse. So hearing this, Sri Shamanand Prabhu headed for Utkal, which I believe is current day Orissa, and Narottam Das Thakur started for his village Keturi Gram, and Srinivas Acharya stayed behind, thinking to somehow deliver the Goswami's books from the king's storehouse. So after spending just a few days in Keturi in order to see the holy birthplace of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Narottam Das Thakur left for Navdvip. And in Navdvip, he went to the house of Jagannath Mishra and he met Ishan Thakur, the old servant of Sachi Mata. At the house of Srivas Pandit, he met Sripati and Srinidhi Pandit. So he went to all these different places in Navdvip and areas around them. He went to all these places for pilgrimage and he met the various devotees who were staying at those places at that time. So after meeting Shuklambara Brahmachari and Damodara Pandit, he went to Shantipur and met the eldest son of Advait Acharya, Achyutananda. Then at Ambika Kalna, he met Hridaya Chaitanya. He went on to the place where the Ganga, Yamuna, and Saraswati meet, a village called Saptagram. I need to do a little bit of more research into this, because I've heard that Ganga, Yamuna, and Saraswati meet in present day Allahabad, which we called Prayagraj. So
That's
maybe
correct.
there's some more story to this, and how they meet in Saptagram as well. Maybe they again diverge and then converge at this place. So I
Mm.
need to look into this. So in that place, Udharan Datta Thakur introduced him to Janva Mata and Vasudha, and they bestowed their mercy upon him. Then he left for the town of Khanakula Krishna Nagar to see the place of Abhiram Gopal Thakur. And then he went to Jagannath Puri, meeting Gopinath. He went to the Samadhi of Haridas Thakur, and upon arriving there began to drown in the ocean of Krishna Prem. And after that he went to the house of Gadadhar Pandit and began to shout at the top of his lungs in a loud voice, O life and soul of Gauranga, O Gadadhar! Thereafter he took darshan of the Tota Gopinath deity and offered his respects at the lotus feet of the Goswami Thakur, who was at that time engaged in the service of Sri Gopinath. He visited the house of Kashi Mishra, Jagannath and Gundicha Jagannath Vallabha Gardens, Narendra Sarovar, and many other places. He left for Narsinghapur, the place of Shamanand Prabhu. He then came to Sri Khand and met Narhari Sarkar Thakur and Sri Raghunandan. He went on to Kanthak Nagar to the house of Gadadhar Das Thakur. And then finally he again went back to Bengal and went to Ek Chakradham to visit the birthplace of Lord Nityanand. And there an old Brahmin who was affectionately disposed towards Narottama showed him the different holy places where Nityanand had performed his Leela. And then finally he again started to return to his home in Keturi Gram, his birthplace. As the Bhakti Ratnakar says, upon his arrival, all the people of the village wanted to be the first to meet him. Raja Krishna Nanda and Purushottam Datta, his father and his uncle, had already passed away by that time. However, his uncle's son, Santosh Datta, was the foremost of saintly persons in the village. All the people were very happy to see their Narottam, and he could see that they were ready to receive the mercy of Krishna. This visit to Keturi was a significant step in Narottama's life. He initiated Santosha, his cousin, and according to Prem Vilas, he initiated 123 other disciples. Lokanath Das Goswami, his spiritual master, wrote to him to establish deity worship in Keturi. So, with the assistance of Santosh, they made all the arrangements. Within a few months, a large temple was built. The temple compound included a big storehouse for food, a kirtan hall, a residence hall, an ashram for devotees, a bathing pond, a beautiful flower garden, and a guest house. And on the full moon day of Falgun, on the festival day of Mahaprabhu's appearance, the temple was opened and many deities were installed. And a great festival, which can only be compared to the Rajsuya Yagya of Yudhishthir Maharaj in its vast expansiveness, began and was celebrated for miles around. This festival went on for around 3 days, and this was the first Gaur Purnima festival. Messengers were sent out. So basically, it seems like Srila Narottam Das Thakur was the pioneer of Gaur Purnima festival. He was the first one to celebrate this ever. And messengers were sent out for miles around Keturi Gram to near and distant lands to invite kings, landowners, poets, pandits, Vaishnavas, authors, as well as many other illustrious guests. Some were sent far and wide to invite the topmost singers and orators. Preparations were made to install 6 deities at one time. Devotees began to arrive from all over the country in Keturi Gram. Santosh arranged a colossal boat to carry everyone across the river. On the other side of the river, he had arranged for palanquins, ox carts, and other conveyances to carry the devotees into Keturi Gram. All the devotees were offered flower garlands, congratulated, and welcomed with great affection. They were given separate houses and servants. All those great Vaishnavas, who are the saviors of the world, graced the land of Keturi Gram with the dust of their lotus feet, thus transforming it into a great place of pilgrimage. The Sankirtan of those great souls created a thunderous sound that filled the heavens. The gates of the temple and the doors of the houses were all well decorated with banana leaves, water pots, auspicious things like mango leaves, small water pots decorated with auspicious signs, different kinds of flowers. All the big gateways and ornamental arches in the city, as well as all the doors of all the houses, were decorated with colorful, auspicious symbols like swastikas and six pointed stars. The whole effect was one of unprecedented beauty and enchantment. Just before the festival stage, in different places were mountain of all kinds of earthen pots, all kinds of silver vessels, and gigantic containers filled with milk, ghee, and thousands of earthen pots filled with yogurt. All these water pots, earthen pots, silver vessels, and giant containers, as well as giant heaps of vegetables, produce, and fruit that were to be prepared for the festival, combined to give the appearance of a great and beautiful mountain. This festival is famous by the name of the Festival of Keturi, and everything that we are going through is the description of that festival. When they opened that big temple and installed the six deities, including a deity of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu.
And I think to this day, this festival is celebrated every year
Right. Okay.
at Keturi.
Got it. Yeah. So the day before the installation ceremony, the devotees, on the order of Sri Janava Mata, began making the final preparations for the installation of the deities on the holy appearance day of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. That evening, they began the preliminary celebratory ceremonies by performing Sankirtan after Narottama Thakur had first offered chandan and flower garlands to Sri Janava Mata and properly worshipped her. Thereafter, all the devotees were decorated with garlands, and upon the request of Sri Narottama and Srinivas Acharya, Sri Raghunandan Thakur sang the Mangala Charan, the auspicious invocation. On and on into the middle of the night, the devotees performed Sankirtan in order to make the atmosphere auspicious for the great festival that was to follow the next day. After chanting and dancing into the middle of the night, the Vaishnavas finally took rest. Many thousands of people honored Mahaprasad that night on the eve of the great festival of Keturi Gram. The next morning, the installation ceremonies and the celebration of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's appearance began. All the Vaishnavas performing Mahasankirtan and Srinivas Acharya presided over the auspicious Abhishek ceremony for the six deities that were being installed. The six deities, Sri Gauranga, Sri Vallabhi Kanta, Sri Krishna, Sri Vrajendra Mohan, Sri Radha Raman, and Sri Radha Kanta. And about an hour before Srinivas Acharya was to perform the Abhishek, the six deities arrived within the temple. At that time, the local devotees, as well as those who had come from far away, arrived there. The orators spoke and the singers sang sweet songs. The expert dancers performed wonderful dances. The different devotees filled the four directions with the ecstatic sounds of the holy name of Krishna and the glories of the Lord. In this way, the four directions were filled with ecstasy. In Gopalpur lived a Brahmin named Vipradas, whom Narottama met. And Vipradas had a rice paddy store where a terrifying snake lived. Out of fear of the snake, he didn't dare to go inside that storehouse. Vipradas told Narottama Das of his fear. Hearing this, Narottama Thakur smiled a little bit and then he said, "Think nothing of it." And when he just opened the door to the storehouse, the snake had vanished. When Narottam Das Thakur came out of the storehouse, it could be seen that he had with him the deities of Gaurasundar on his lap. Everyone saw a great miracle. Out of the storehouse, Narottam Das Thakur emerged holding Gauranga. So it was an amazing pastime.
Yes, yes.
According to the appropriate rules and regulations of the Shastras, Srinivas Acharya performed the Abhishek ceremony, after which the deities were dressed in the finest cloth and decorated with beautiful ornaments. So we are still going through that 3-day festival of Keturi Gram, where the first celebrations of God Purnima ever took place. After this, different kinds of sweet rice and wonderful vegetable preparations and drinks, and thousands of varieties of foodstuffs were offered to the deities. The deities were offered all manner of wonderful preparations of bhoga in different pots. As the bhoga was offered, kirtan was performed, and then after the deities were satisfied in taking all the preparations to their heart's content, they were offered a soothing mouthwash of tambula, and then the deities were decorated with fragrant chandan and garlands. After this, there was a great arti ceremony, during which, in great ecstasy, all the devotees performed Sankirtan. After performing Kirtan and dancing in great bliss, all the devotees, forgetting their material bodies, fell to the ground, offering prostrated dandavats. After this, Srinivas Acharya offered the prasadam chandan and garlands first to Janava Mata, and thereafter he gave garlands and chandan to all the devotees present. Srinivas, Narottama, and Shyamananda Prabhu distributed all the sandalwood and garlands to all the devotees present. And when they were finished, on the order of Janva Mata, Sri Narsingh Chaitanya Das decorated Srinivas Acharya, Shyamanand Prabhu, and Narottam Das Thakur with flower garlands and sandalwood pulp. At that time, on the order of Janva Mata, Narottam Das Thakur began to perform Kirtan. The sweet and wonderful Kirtan of Narottam Das Thakur, with its sweet tune and unique style of voice, filled the four directions and the heavens above, causing all the men and women weep tears of prem, and they all sported in the waves of the Vaikuntha ocean of ecstasy. At that time, Sri Gauranga Mahaprabhu, along with his own personal associates, appeared there and joined in the Sankirtan. Who can describe the wealth of happiness felt by the devotees when, in the midst of the Kirtan, appeared none other than the munificent Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself? And this is when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had already disappeared physically from this world. So it is mentioned, like a flash of lightning in the midst of a mass of beautiful clouds, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself appeared within the crowd of devotees through divine manifestation. So it was a divine manifestation because actually Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had already disappeared by that time. So he wasn't present physically in this world. So Narottam Das Thakur began to sing a very moving kirtan and was the first exponent of the Garan Hati tradition of kirtan. In his kirtans, he employed the most sophisticated style of rhythms, tal, melodic formats, rag, gestures of emotional expression, abhinaya, and developed dance techniques, natyam. This is elaborately described in Bhakti Ratnakar. Narottam was inaugurating what came to be known as Padavali Kirtan, a dramatic singing technique that begins with the glorification of Mahaprabhu and then gradually evolves to Radha Krishna Kirtan in a very beautiful way, often connected through thematic references and melodic consistency. Mahaprabhu appeared in their midst along with Sri Narhari, Sri Mukunda, Sri Gauridas Pandit, Advait Acharya, Nityanand, and many of the other of the Lord's internal associates. They danced in a large company with a cast of thousands. All the devotees, especially Srinivas Acharya and Narottam Thakur, felt complete joy and satisfaction. As the devotees danced more and more, each one felt his or her body become soaked with tears as they completely lost themselves in Narottama's Kirtan. After the Sankirtan, Sri Janva Mata offered the deities some red powder, which is usually thrown by the Vaishnavas at the time of the holy festival. After this, upon her order, the devotees began to play with the dye powder by throwing it all over each other in great joy. Everyone's body was covered with the red powder as the devotees threw it on each other. In this way, after the fun they had with the red dye powder, the evening approached and the time came to celebrate the appearance of Sri Gauranga with an Abhishek ceremony. When the twilight came, the bathing ceremony began, and it was conducted by Srinivas Acharya as the devotees sang the Abhishek song for Mahaprabhu's appearance ceremony and celebration. The festival lasted for 3 blissful days, after which the guests very reluctantly left. For a number of reasons, the Keturi festival is considered one of the most important milestones in Vaishnava history. First of all, since the Goswami literature was stolen, Narottam did not initially have the asset of books with which to spread the message of the Goswamis. So he had to use a different medium. This he did through the Keturi festival, which eventually became an annual event and continued to be a source of inspiration even after the Goswami books were recovered. Direct disciples of Gauranga, Nityananda, and Advaita participated. Different styles of kirtan were sung for the first time. By gathering Vaishnavas from many different lands in one place, Narottam was able to convey to them the conclusions of the Vrindavan Goswamis in an organized way, and he was able to get the impressions of the Vaishnav pilgrims as well. Due to his devotion, purity, and wonderful gentle nature, Narottama quickly became the most famous Vaishnava guru, and this brought disciples to him from all over Bharat, and he inspired people from all walks of life, from kings to Brahmins. However, there was a certain Brahminical class of people who wanted to defame him on the basis that Narottama was born in a Kayast Shudra family, and they sought the assistance of the local king, who at that time was a pious man named Raj Narsingha. So, Raj Narsingha, who ruled the province of Pakapalli, was consistently harassed by the Orthodox Brahmin community in regard to Narottama. They said that Narottama was a low born person and should therefore not have taken sannyas, nor should he have accepted as disciples those who were Brahmins by birth, such as Ganga Narayan Chakravarti and Ramchandra Kaviraj. They insisted that the king inflict a severe punishment on Narottama for his impertinence. The Raja sent a message to Narottama asking how a genuine sadhu such as he could possibly violate the injunctions of scripture by committing the alleged atrocities. Narottama responded by sending a letter which flatly stated that there was nothing in the scriptures properly interpreted to uphold the views of the caste conscious Brahmins, and that he was willing to attend a public debate to prove his point of view. Narottam assured the king that if his perspective on this subject was proven wrong, he would amend his ways. The Raja gathered together a group of his greatest scholars and they marched toward Keturi to debate with the Vaishnava saint. In the interim, however, Narottama's two dearmost Brahmin disciples, Ganga Narayan Chakravarti and Ramchandra Kaviraj, devised a clever ruse to show the real glory of their respect worthy teacher. One of the Brahmin disciples disguised himself as a potter, the other as a seller of betel nuts. They quickly set up small shops in an area known as Kumarpur, just outside Keturi. This was on a roadway along which the king's men would have to pass. So when the scholars came marching through, the two devotees called them over to buy their necessary supplies. This gave them the opportunity to engage in polite conversation discussing various issues of the day. To the surprise of the scholars, however, these shopkeepers spoke in perfect Sanskrit, which only the most learned men were able to do. How is it that simple shopkeepers in Narottama's town are such scholars? If working men are as sophisticated as this, what would the real scholars be like? And what would Narottama be like? The king's men decided to see how knowledgeable these shopkeepers actually were and began to debate the issue of Narottama's status as a guru of Brahmins. With ease, Ganga Narayan and Ramchandra defeated the king's scholars. As the royal academics referred to scriptural quote after quote, Narottama's men showed them how they were taking the citations out of context and misinterpreting them altogether. They called for their gurus, who arrived on the scene with Raja Narsingha and Roop Narayan. Roop Narayan himself was drawn into the debate and was defeated by the Bhagavad based arguments of Ramchandra and Ganga Narayan. When the king requested their introduction, uh, so Roop Narayan, when the king requested their introduction, those two shopkeepers informed him that they were two extremely insignificant disciples of Srila Narottam Das Thakur, Mahashaya. Having met defeat in this village marketplace, Roop Narayan and the Smarat Brahmins were no longer interested in proceeding onward to Keturi. Their crusade evaporated as they all decided to return immediately to their respective homes. That night, after Raja Narsingha had returned to his house, he had a dream in which Durga Devi told him, Narsingha, you have committed a great offense at the feet of Narottam Das Thakur. As a result of this Vaishnava Prad, I will have to cut you all to pieces with this chopper. If you want to save yourself, then you had better immediately go and take shelter at Narottam Das Thakur's lotus feet. When his sleep broke, the king quickly took his bath and set out for Keturi. Roop Narayan also had a similar dream and was also proceeding towards Keturi at the same time. They met upon their arrival there and approached the temple of Sri Gauranga in order to meet Narottam Thakur. Simply by seeing his transcendental form, imbued with Krishna Prem, the two offenders became purified and fell down to offer their obeisances at Thakur Mahashaya's feet. Thakur Mahashaya very humbly presented himself as being a fallen soul. Finally, he initiated them with Radha Krishna mantra. Unlike Srinivas and Shamananda, once Narottam left Vrindavan and he never returned. Rather, he spent his years in the vicinity of Keturi Gram, cultivating devotees and writing his resplendent poetry. Govind Kaviraj described Narottam as a great king of prema, divine love, and Ramchandra as Narottama's minister. These two, Narottam and Ramchandra, spent much of their day studying and teaching the Bhagavad Puran and the literature of Rupa, Sanatan, and the other Goswamis. Since Narottam was the prince of a wealthy state, he was known as the Rajkumar in his youth. He had the opportunity to study with many great scholars of his day. Taking advantage of this, Narottam became eloquent and prolific and conveyed all of the tenets of Gaudiya Vaishnavism through the medium of poetic language. One of his most important work is the Prarthana, a set of 33 Bengali songs. This is divided into 258 verses arranged in 55 sections. He succinctly deals with such subjects as prayer, self criticism, mental training, spiritual happiness, the agony of the soul in separation from God, the superiority of Vaishnavism, the topmost aspirations, the guru disciple relationship, residence in Vrindavan, the importance of asceticism, and the humility of a Vaishnav. In addition, 27 sections of Prarthana focus on Manjari Sadhana, which is the esoteric form of Gaudiya practice in which one visualizes oneself as a servant of Srimati Radharani. Since she is very dear to Krishna, this is the secret way to Krishna's heart. Also important is Narottama's Prema Bhakti Chandrika, a lengthy poem, 120 verses divided into 9 sections, that elucidates the Gaudiya philosophy in seed-like form. This poem has to have been written after the first Keturi festival and the death of his dear friend Ramchandra Kaviraj. because Kaviraj's passing is mourned in one particular verse. Many of the same themes of the Prarthana are dealt with in this masterpiece of Bengali poetry. In addition to his two major works, Narottama wrote many shorter poems. Srila Prabhupada was fond of singing Narottama's poetry and of quoting him in his lectures, which attests to the abiding value and relevance of Narottama's achievement. Narottama Das Thakur serves Srimati Radhika as Vilas Manjari. His samadhi is in Radha Gokulananda's temple courtyard, and this is the picture of his samadhi. Jai Srila Narottam Das Thakur ki jai.
Have you been there to his samadhi? Do you remember it at all?
I don't remember, Prabhuji.
Yeah,
Where is
Radha
that?
Kulanandar Mandir.
In fact, I can't even remember where this temple is. Is this in Vrindavan or?
Yeah, Vrindavan. It's near Radharaman Mandir. Radharaman Mandir is very famous. And
Yes, that I remember. Remember going there last year.
okay. So then just about 100 yards further down that gully is
Okay.
Radha Gokulanandan. And in there's a courtyard full of samadhis of great acharyas like Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur and many really amazing Gaudiya
Yes.
Vaishnavas.
Okay, so there is one more temple, right, where Srila Prabhupada stayed before he came to
Oh,
US, where there are a lot of samadhis. That is different, correct?
Radha Damodar, that's different.
Yeah, Radha Damodar. Okay, I remember that one, but not this one.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, thank you very much. Any questions? Oh, yes, this is Keturi. So where he was doing those festivals.
Mm-hmm.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna Riyanj. And this is the Pana Mantra Narottam Das Thakur wrote for his spiritual master.
Yeah. Srimad Radha Vinodaika Seva Sampat Samanvitam Padma Nabha Bhadamacham Shrimal Lokanath Prabhum Bhaje. I worship the lotus feet of Srila Lokanath Prabhu, the son of Sri Padmanabh. He is a storehouse of single-minded service to the lotus feet of Sri Sri Radha Vinod. Srila Lokanath Das Goswami ki jai. Srila Narottam Das Thakur ki jai.
Very nice. Thank you. Any questions? Any comments? Anything you'd like to know more? Okay. Yeah, you spoke well, Uddhava. So
Thank you, Prabhuji, for your guidance.
you should definitely do more, and perhaps I'll have less writing, and you can speak more because we covered a lot about his pastimes.
He has a lot.
Yeah, there's a lot of pastimes. Yeah,
Nice.
very true. So we can chant the Nishinga Prayers, unless anybody's got any questions or comments. That's on the Ratnaji. Okay, so let's go to the Nishinga Prayers.
Prabhuji,
Yes, Riyanj, what happened?
Prabhuji, is this Narottam Das Thakur?
Yeah. Riyanj, this is Uddhav. Uddhav, this is Riyanj. Riyanj is a young 7-year-old. Are you 7? Or are you 8 now?
Prabhuji, 7 only.
When is your birthday?
May 29.